You're listening to Wiretap with Jonathan Goldstein. Today's episode, Diaries.
July 27th, 4 p.m. One day I will write an autobiography called Who Really Shot J.R.? It will have nothing to do with J.R. or Dallas, but it will be a very beautiful book. And everyone will wonder, why did he call it Who Really Shot J.R.? I think this thought while lying on the couch, my hands clasped behind my head and my legs crossed. I stare at the ceiling, and for a while, I feel omnipotent. July 28th, 9 a.m. Zuzu, all of 9 years old, has started this new thing where she walks around the apartment talking like an angry old East Indian man. Neither Hetty nor I know where she has gotten this from. When she does it, we call her Grandpa. "Don't you talk back to me," she says. "Get off the couch and get a job." "Grandpa," I say, "you have to calm down or you'll give yourself a heart attack." "If I have a heart attack, it'll be your fault." She walks around the house, working herself into a tizzy about the dusting that needs to be done. July 29th, 8 p.m. I sit on the living room couch and worry about whether I made my last month's credit card payment on time. I'm pretty sure that I did, but I'm not certain. Hetty calls all of my worries bourgeois. She watches me from the kitchen as I chew the inside of my mouth. Finally, she comes over and sits down beside me. She does her Johnny imitation, her imitation of me. "Woe is little me," she says. "I am so sad. My mother has to work late, and I have to heat up my own fish sticks. However will I know when they're done?" With this statement, Hetty believes she has captured my zeitgeist. July 30th, 1 a.m. Hetty and Zuzu are talking in their sleep. It always starts at about the same point in the night. First Hetty starts in our room, and then as though responding, Zuzu begins from her room across the apartment. They go back and forth, having a conversation made up of grunts and grumbles, and then they stop. In the morning, I will tell them all about it, and like always, they will tell me to stop making stuff up. July 29th, 5 p.m. Zuzu walks through the door, drops her school bag on the floor, and turns on the TV. She looks over to me and says hi. I'm sitting in front of the computer monitor. Zuzu comes over and tells me to scooch over, that she wants to play video games. I tell her I'm writing. She watches me for about 20 seconds. My fingers don't move. "What are you doing now?" she asks. "You aren't writing now." I scooch over, and it's like scooching over for the sun. July 30th, 8:30 a.m. I dreamt last night that I was in Alex Papadopoulos' basement, and I was finding all these rooms down there. There were all these beds and hallways that neither of us had ever known about. Plus, in the dream, we were still good friends, just like when we were kids. I said to him, "This is just like a lot of dreams I have. I'm constantly dreaming about exactly this kind of thing, and now it's happening for real." I woke up, and the blankets were all over the place. The fan was going. Hetty was already taking a bath. July 31st, 11:30 a.m. I have to call Davy Rothbard up for the radio show. Davy runs a zine called Found because people find stuff on the street and send it in to him. People send in things like notes passed in class that say things like, "Your breath stinks. What toothpaste do you use?" Davy gets sent letters, notes left on windshields, to-do lists, and sometimes even diaries.
I don't know, yeah, it's pretty fascinating to see people when they're so unself-conscious, what they write in their journals, because they never expected anyone would see that, so they're really open and honest, and you catch them in very private moments. But to me, it's kind of riveting to read these and see what's going on in other people's minds. Because really, you recognize yourself in them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm always like, oh man, I've written that same kind of pitiful love note, or there's hopefulness mixed with heartbreak, mixed with excitement, mixed with incredible anger, and many of them going on simultaneously, and to see that somebody's so different from you, maybe somebody you don't know, to see that they have experienced that same very specific blend of emotions and feelings that you have felt, it makes me feel just a little more connected to all the strangers that I share the world with.
Do you ever feel sort of like that you're crossing a line, that you're going someplace that you're not really supposed to be going, that a line is being crossed, and I mean, is that a part of the allure?
Well, I think if I was reading my roommate's diary or my girlfriend's or my mom's journal, I might feel like I was trespassing. I don't feel like I'm trespassing in the same way when I read the journal entries of a stranger. Mm-hmm. And I think, there's certainly, people say, isn't that voyeuristic, with sort of the idea of a stigma attached to voyeurism, whereas I believe a certain degree of voyeurism is healthy. Because we're surrounded by strangers all the time, just, on your way to work, walking on the street, sitting on the bus. I think it's natural to be curious what other people's experience of being human is like. Here's one that was found in Madison, Wisconsin, and it's a journal of this young girl from November of 1963. So she begins each journal entry, Dear Tammy, and she signs them with her name, which is Nadine. So the first one is Friday, November 22nd, 1963, and it says, Dear Tammy, today the president was killed. Isn't that terrible? At school everyone was crying, except the Republicans. President Kennedy was killed by a guy named Harry Oswald. He says he didn't do it, but he did. And then the next day is Saturday, November 23rd, 1963. She says, Dear Tammy, there will be no school Monday because President Johnson has declared it the National Day of Mourning for President Kennedy. I stayed overnight at Jerry's today because it was John's birthday. We babysat for the next-door neighbors until 12:30. Boy, that baby's a brat. There hasn't been much news about the assassination of President Kennedy. I don't think it'll be much fun having an extra day off because you can't watch TV or radio because it's all news. Nadine. And then finally, Sunday, November 24th, 1963. Dear Tammy, guess what? The assassinator got assassinated. Yep, Harry Oswald got killed. I think it serves him right. After all, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Some people say he's entitled to a fair trial, but I think that would just waste more time. Why not get it over and done with? Today on TV, they played the national anthem on a program which was dedicated to the late President Kennedy, and I ran into the kitchen because I was crying. Nadine.
Do you think, like what also makes it so appealing is that there is something sort of unsanctioned or taboo about it? Like if a given diary was going to be published and you were allowed to read it,
right,
it just wouldn't have the same kind of mystique.
Yes and no. I mean, I'm fascinated by these journals that have come in the mail, that people have found and sent in to me, and yet there's no chance of me getting caught, per se. The author of it isn't going to stumble into my basement and catch me reading it. So to me, it's still riveting just to look at a stranger's life and see it so closely, and all these, personal and private moments, what they're going through. Someone sent me this journal recently, and it's covered 3 years in the span of this young man in California, from graduating high school in L.A. to beginning sort of a career in theater, and then all of his tumultuous relationships with men, ending with him realizing that he's HIV positive. And it's so sweet, moving. You get so close to this kid, and you're rooting for him and you're trying to coach him in your own mind. And then when he finds out he has HIV, it's just like, some of it's just really crushing, and yeah. So for me, it's not so much the fear of getting caught.
You got another one?
Sure. Let me see. Someone sent me this notebook from Portland, Maine, and it was a notebook that you can tell it belonged to a cook at some restaurant. So mixed in with all of these sort of recipes he's been working out, crab cakes, tomato fennel broth, salads, he's also got these short journal entries, and you can tell he's trying to overcome an addiction to heroin. So, for example, Saturday, July 17th, the most important thing I do today is not do the poison. I have a long day of work that I must make it through. Also, I got to call Ma and Pa tomorrow. July 24th, stay away from H-bomb. July 26th, things to do when the heroin demon is in the house. First, recognize I'm having urges and tell someone fast. I don't even really need to talk for long because the next time I see them, they'll have either one question for me or a million. One would be much easier. And then, Bry's famous barbecue chicken sandwich.
Have you ever read someone's diary that you weren't supposed to?
Oh yeah, I've read my mom's. I read both my brothers.
But wait a second. Before you were making the point that you wouldn't read your mother's diary.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't now.
Oh,
maybe I would. I wouldn't read my girlfriend's.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I would read, like, say my mom's journal, or I don't know. You know what? It's just so interesting to watch somebody when they don't know you're watching them. Like, have you ever woken up in the room where your girlfriend is, and she thinks you're still asleep, and just to watch her move around the room, and something so simple as maybe she's watching TV or looking at a magazine or drinking lemonade, but you feel like you're getting to know them in a new way, and it's a really powerful and strange sensation, you know, to see them, what they're like alone in a room, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's what it's like to read the journal of, like, say, my mom.
When you would read your mom's diary,
yeah,
was there a part of her that was revealed in the diaries that you didn't get to know otherwise?
I guess, you know what it was? It wasn't that there was information that was new to me,
mm-hmm.
but it was the voice that she used with the journal and with herself. You know, I mean, it was the relationship she had with herself. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has this sort of relationship with themselves when they're alone, you know? And little things you might write in your journal, little, like, pep talks, you know? There's just a way you relate to yourself, you know? A tone that you use when you're around just yourself. And so to even just see the tone that my mom used in her journal, that did feel like I was getting to know her or see her in a different way. For some people, like, it would be such a terrible rule to break to read someone's journal that they wouldn't allow any excuse. But for me, if I did, it is because I want to know them in a stronger way. More than anything, it makes me see that we're not all so different from each other, you know. And sometimes when you're dealing with something that's really heavy or difficult, it's easy to, I know for me, to just feel like, man, no one could possibly understand what I'm going through right now. And then when you read some of these other journals, it makes me feel a little, you know, less alone.
This is May 27th, 1983. I think I was almost 16. Well, it's really the 28th because it's 1 a.m. We just saw Flashdance, and man, could that girl dance. I wish I was really pretty, like that girl on the movie. Even though she was a welder, she was pretty too, but from the dancing. And I wish I could dance just like her. But my room's dinky, even with the bunk beds. I love rock. I don't know what I'd do without rock music. Whenever Stairways to Heaven comes on, I have to make everything quiet to really listen to the lyrics. Then there's this song by Asia. God, it makes me shake and it scares me. And I want to actually make myself cry because I feel so sorry for the guy in it. Richie's coming down for the whole summer and I want to be with him. Be with him. And then I think, oh, what if I get pregnant? Would I be happy or would I be destroyed? Probably destroyed. But he doesn't notice me as more than his little sister's friend. I think I will die for sure.
This is Lisa Gabriel. Lisa's kept detailed diaries all the way back to her teen years in the early 80s. Like a lot of teenagers, Lisa felt like she was the only person in the world who had ever thought of keeping a personal record of her life, which made the whole keeping of the diary feel secret and special. Growing up, Lisa believed that there was really no one around who was like her, that there was no one around she could really talk to, and so her diary became her greatest confidant. But what she didn't know was that there was someone close by, like same bedroom as her close by, who was also keeping a diary that contained a different version of events. Here's Lisa again.
I'm going to start right from the beginning. The very first paragraph that I ever wrote in a diary, it was December 25th, 1981.
And how old were you?
I would have been 13, I guess? 14. It says, "This is Lisa Gabriel's journal diary. Right now I'm in my 4th month of high school. Many things happened, which I am going to state here. First of all, I attend Bell River District High School. The main reason I wake up at 6 o'clock every morning and take pains with my hair, makeup, and clothes is one reason. Mark G. When I first saw him 3 years ago, I guess right then and there I wanted to get him. Oh, look, Sue's bitching to go to bed."
Susan. Mm-hmm. Susan's your sister, Susan.
Yeah, Sue. For 18 years that I lived at home, I shared a room with my sister, Sue, and she's 18 months younger than me, which made no difference when we were 6 and 8 and 7 and 9 and, 8 and 10. And we were fairly inseparable when we were little girls until high school. My sister and I drifted apart almost overnight.
She never knew I had a diary. None. I had no idea she did either. All these years of writing and everything, I had no idea.
Yet you guys shared the same room.
Same room, yeah. I named my diary Rock. R-O-C-H-E. I don't know why. But every entry is Dear Rock, Dear Rock. Okay, here we go.
December 29th, 1982. Dear Rock, sorry I haven't written in too long. A lot has been happening. Sea Cadets is going excellent. I never want to quit. I went to a Christmas dance for cadets on the 22nd. I danced with Ron once. I danced with Fraser 3 times. To You and I, Truly, and Stairway to Heaven. That was a really long song, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Our family got the Commodore VIC-20 for Christmas. I really love it. It's fun. I type all kinds of stuff about Fraser, Ron, Mark. I love it. Wendy Walker got me Love's Baby Soft. I love that, too.
I wasn't a real big talker, and I was very shy and very insecure and very, just sad. There was a lot of things going on in our home. My parents were fighting a lot, and it was the only way. I used to close my door in my bedroom and write in my diary. And I would write songs and poems and words to different songs that I liked and drew pictures and things like that. And that's how I literally got through every day, just by writing in my diary.
I always saw my sister as a kind of shy, dispassionate, uncreative person. She didn't interest me. She was sort of a dark shadow. She would be like the Ali Sheedy to my Molly Ringwald. I just assumed she didn't have an internal life, that she did not have thoughts and feelings and emotions about the turmoil of our family or the strangeness of new schools or the disappointment of yet another house, another move. I didn't think that she had those feelings. I wrote a bunch of stuff about her. And Susan, I don't know, she's different. She doesn't write or play guitar or draw or write plays or do mime, and she's boring sometimes. And she seems miserable over nothing, and she mostly sleeps and sits around and watches TV. And she doesn't read books like I do, because it doesn't hold her attention long enough. Even the comics don't. I guess that's her problem, a short attention span. Her personality just developed in a completely opposite direction. I went into, clothes and boys and music and partying and shoplifting and hitchhiking. And she went to the regimented Sea Cadets and cut her hair short, played soccer, and opposite of me completely. And she had zero patience for my frivolity, and I had almost none for her, stolidity. And we just weren't interested in each other's lives.
Even in the hallways at school and stuff, I barely even looked at her. Like, just barely acknowledged her. And yeah, and I think that's when, you know, we really drifted, even though, like, we shared a room. Like I said, I mean, we just drifted. And I didn't care what she did, and she didn't care what I did. She thought I was a dumb twit. You know what I mean? Like, you know, in cadets, dumb twit kind of thing. And she was this worldly sort of whatever, fashion queen. And I think she just always looked at me like I was stupid because I didn't talk. I didn't say anything. I didn't share anything. I wasn't funny. I wasn't anything. February 10th, 1982. Dear Rock, I'd like to talk about my gorgeous hunk of flesh, Frank. I really love him, but maybe it's infatuation. I don't know. But I'm glad I went out with him today. It was fun.
I'll write to you soon if I can. My sister's usually around, but she slept over her friends. Great. I don't like her anyways.
Before my parents split up, I just started to disappear. I just stayed away from the house. I was starting to pepper my diaries with little descriptions and ideas, I guess trying to figure out why they weren't going to work out. I knew it. I was young, I think 14 to 16, their marriage just started to spiral down, and mostly I would distract myself from their pain by writing about boys and cars and whatever I could to not think about how sad our home life was becoming. And I remember times when I would be furiously scribbling in my journal, you know, I love Mark, Jesus, I wish they would stop fighting, as though they were interrupting my concentration. It got to the point where I wasn't thinking or concerning myself with the falling out of their marriage. It was just like, shut up, I'm trying to play guitar in the bathroom. Shut up, I'm trying to, you know, write in my journal in my bedroom. And then I just started to disappear. I just stayed away from the house. I started drinking with my girlfriend Belinda. We were both beginning to become from broken homes. Our parents were both fighting quite significantly. This was March 1983.
So you were like 15?
Yeah. Me and B downed half the bottle. It tasted gross because I hate 7-year-old whiskey. Yuck. I thought this would be a good time to get a few lessons on necking. Jimmy kissed me because I sort of remember biting his tongue, and I remember biting something, his ear or his neck or something, but I don't know. B bumped her head, fell over. I kept collapsing. I almost passed out in Kenton's room on the way to the John. Next thing, Kimmy was barfing all over. Well, really in this big green pail. So the very next thing, I was barfing all over Kimmy's little skunk and her monkey hand puppet. I ended up throwing away her skunk because it was too far gone, and I cleaned up the rest.
August 24th, 1985. I am so wasted. I felt like writing in you. I am so stupid it makes me cry. I'm scared. My heart is afraid. What's life all about? Who knows and who cares? That's August 24th, 85.
August 24th, 1985. Summer's almost over, and yet another tragedy, which is due about this time, has hit me. Here's what happened to me all in one day. Number one, Dale didn't call, but I really didn't expect him to. Number two, my parents are splitting up soon. Number three, worst of all, we are moving, but I don't know where. My mother thinks back to Windsor at my grandparents' house, but my dad isn't moving there, so he is getting an apartment in town, and I'm going to try to live with him because he's going to live in Belle River, and that would be great. It's just my mom won't like that idea very much, and I know she won't give me up that easily. God help me, I need help.
I remember writing a lot about why doesn't somebody leave, or why don't they just split up? They fight so much. I'm so sick of it. You know, please, somebody just leave. And then he finally did. I used to come home from school every day, and I used to go down in the basement, and we had a record player, and I would play the same record over and over again. It was Dan Fogelberg, over and over again, and cry every day. And my mother never once came down or never wondered what I was doing, nothing. And I remember my dad came down. It was I think I was going into grade 9 or grade 10. And he said, I'm going to leave now. And I said, I know. And he said, you know, I'll call. And I said, okay, whatever. Like, it was just kind of like, whatever. And, I mean, it wasn't a shock to me, but I just wanted him to go. Like, I just thought this was time for somebody to go. And I remember he just left. And we barely saw him after that. And I never wrote about it. I don't know. I wrote about everything before and everything after, but nothing about that day.
It was years later. In fact, we weren't close until we had, my mother had this breakdown when I was in my early 20s, and I came home because my sister was dealing with it. And we just started talking about, how hard it was and how scared we were sometimes and how fun it was, too, and how great. Like, we also had terrific memories about, my mother was hilarious and spontaneous, and she was just this bigger-than-life person. And my dad was very sweet and gentle, but they just had a rotten marriage. So we would have these great chats at the lake, smoking cigarettes and just catching up. And then we started talking about, our diaries. And mine were back in Toronto, and she started showing me hers, and I couldn't believe it.
Because you didn't know that she had been keeping diaries?
Not only that, but I couldn't believe what she wrote about. How sad she was. How miserable she was. How miserable I made her.
I used to wonder, how could nobody see this in me? She was so consumed with her life, and I was so consumed with mine, and my parents were so consumed with their fighting and all that stuff that we didn't pay attention to each other at that time. We just were all just very focused on surviving on our own and just sort of getting through our own lives. I thought she was the happiest person in the world. I thought that she had all these friends and that she had her life was normal. I thought everything was normal for her, and I thought everything was not normal for me. And reading our diaries now, I realized that she was going through the same kind of, sadness and loneliness as a teenager as I was.
Would you have ever imagined that possible when you were a kid back then?
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's nice to know that somebody that you shared 18 years of life in a room with actually was more similar to you than not. Because I always wanted to have, the sister and that I was close to, and I always imagined I'd grow up and find that. And to just have had it under my nose all those years was just like, that's a bonus. And we've become so similar now. Like, she's really my best friend. I talk to her every day.
On Wiretap today, you heard Davy Rothbart of Found Magazine and Lisa and Susan Gabriel. Wiretap is written and performed by Jonathan Goldstein and produced by Jonathan Goldstein with Sarah Gilbert and Carolyn Warren. You can reach us by email at wiretap@cbc.ca. Wiretap returns next Saturday, and you can also hear the show on Tuesday nights at 8:30, 9 o'clock in Newfoundland.